Thanks very much for staying with us. Time out for African News with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. After weeks of little progress, South Sudan's government and rebels loyal to the former vice president finally agreed to a truce. The deal struck in Addis Ababa and is due to start within 24 hours. Also, regional and international leaders watch on in Bangui as the city's former leader takes her oath as interim president. Catherine Samba-Panza calls for warring militia to put down their weapons. And bosses spend more on their dogs. Passionate words from union bosses in South Africa as thousands of platinum miners down tools on a wage strike. First up, after weeks of stalled talks in neighbouring Ethiopia, South Sudan and rebel fighters have finally agreed on a ceasefire. Weeks of warfare between the army of President Salva Kiir and militia backing his former number two, Riek Machar, have cost thousands of lives and uprooted at least 500,000 people. Battling's been divided along ethnic lines between the Dinka and Nuer tribes. Well, for more on this, we're now joined by Marta van Wolf. She's in Addis Ababa and she joins us now. Marta, are you with us? Okay, a few technical problems there getting through to Marta. Hopefully she'll be able to join us with more on the details of that deal struck in Addis Ababa a little later on. Well, the fighting in South Sudan escalated quickly after initial clashes broke out in Juba. Nicholas Schumann now takes a look back at how what began as a political dispute spiraled so quickly into a bloody ethnic conflict.
On the 16th of December, South Sudan's President Salva Kiir addressed the nation. There was heavy gunfire in Juba the night before, and he vowed to defeat the rebels.
The attackers fled, and your armed forces are pursuing them. I promise you today that justice will prevail.
Very quickly, the government accused Riek Machar, the man who was sacked as vice president in July, of trying to overthrow Kiir. Several senior politicians were arrested. The fighting spread across the country. Thousands sought refuge in UN compounds.
Everywhere there's fight. In the whole country, not even in the capital city of Juba. Even outside those provinces, the fight continued till now.
The clashes pitted Kiir's ethnic group, the Dinka, against Machar's community, the Nuer. The two groups have already fought each other in the past for domination and resources, long before South Sudan's independence in 2011. Peace talks opened in Addis Ababa on January the 4th, but they failed to stop the fighting. The rebels seized the towns of Bor and Malakal. They were then recaptured by the government forces, who received the backing of Ugandan soldiers. A deal has been signed, but only after 5 weeks of clashes that killed thousands of people and forced 500,000 South Sudanese to flee their homes. The question now is, will the ceasefire be respected? As analysts say, Riek Machar doesn't control all the rebel groups.
Central African Republic's new interim president took her oath of office today in Bangui. Regional and international leaders attended as Catherine Samba-Panza, the former mayor of the capital, took over from her predecessor, ex-rebel chief Michel Djotodia. Samba-Panza's vowed national reconciliation and called on the warring militia to lay down their arms. Over 1 million people have been displaced in chaos. It's been escalating ever since Djotodia's Muslim Saleka movement seized power last year. Let's hear a bit from the new interim president.
Every day, unfortunately, new tensions are emerging, weakening the establishment of peace and sowing doubt in the hearts and spirits of Central Africans.
Well, even as Samba-Panza took her oath, sectarian tensions again flared up violently across Bangui, with at least 15 people being killed. There are fears that fighting between Christian and Muslim communities could still escalate into genocide. Our correspondent sent us this report from Bouali, not far from the capital.
Hand in hand, this priest leads an imam to the safety of his church. Like many Muslims in Bouali, the imam has found himself the target of violence from these Christian anti-Balaka militiamen. All this now going on under the gaze of the French peacekeeping force here outside of the capital Bangui for the first time. They've arrived to disarm the militias, confiscating their machetes and knives as civilians run for cover inside the church.
Whose gun is this?
The guns belong to the Saleka. We anti-Balaka don't have weapons like that. We have machetes and nothing else. It's our Seleka brothers who have the guns.
No guns, but machetes with sharpened blades that on this day alone have killed 4 people and seriously injured dozens of others. Local Red Cross volunteers are being assisted by the French soldiers, but they lack the means to treat all these victims. With the violence showing no sign of stopping, the priest has decided to step in.
If anyone comes to attack someone, I'll block their way. They can take my life instead of the lives of these people. I won't allow a single person to get in here and harm anyone. Of any faith, I just won't accept it.
More than 1,000 Muslims here have been forced from their homes, now confined to the vicinity of the church.
When the French soldiers leave, what will happen then? What will be the fate of the Muslims and us Christians? The anti-Balaka will attack the Muslims, even inside the church. That's the reality of it, I'm telling you.
Effectively held hostage, these families only have one wish: to flee. The question is how they'll manage to do so.
Look now at some news in brief from across the continent. The International Criminal Court scrapped the February start date for the Crimes Against Humanity trial for Kenya's president. Uhuru Kenyatta was due before Hague judges on the 5th. The prosecutors have asked for more time to prepare their case. He's accused of orchestrating post-electoral violence in which over 1,000 people were killed in 2007. In a unanimous vote, Morocco's voted to get rid of a legal provision that allowed rapists to escape prosecution by marrying their victims. The loophole provided by Article 475 caused public outcry in 2012 when a 16-year-old girl, Amina Al-Filali, committed suicide after having been forced to marry her alleged attacker. Hospital officials in Libya say that at least 86 people have been killed in fierce clashes in the south of the country over the past fortnight. Warring tribes, government forces and former loyalists of the late dictator Muammar Gaddafi have been battling in Sabha since a revenge attack by Tabu tribesmen against a militia commander of the Arab Awlad Suleiman group. Fighting is part of a general state of lawlessness across the country in the wake of the 2011 revolution that toppled Gaddafi. Tunisia's National Assembly has finished approving all articles of the country's new constitution. Disagreements between the majority Ennahda party and the secular opposition have held up the process, which had been due to be finished by January 14th, the third anniversary of the revolution that removed Zine El Abidine Ben Ali. The constitution's key to getting the country back on democratic track. Lawmakers now have one final vote to approve the constitution in its entirety. Tens of thousands of South African platinum miners headed out on strike on Thursday. Demanding higher wages, union bosses addressed cheering workers outside of the Lonmin Marikana mine. That's where, in 2012, dozens of striking miners were shot and killed by police.
Security has been tightened around South Africa's platinum mines as members of the AMCU, the sector's main union, began a work stoppage. The strike for higher wages concerned some 80,000 workers. Memories are still strong in South Africa of the 34 striking workers at the Marikana mine who were shot dead by police in August 2012. But for the miners, the rising cost of living and poor standard of life has necessitated a strike.
The money I earn is between 4,000 and 6,000 rand after taxes. I cannot support my family. I cannot send my kids to university. And I am also renting where I live. And after paying all my installments, I'm only left with 1,500 rand, so the money we earn is very little.
The country's top 3 platinum mines are closed. Together, they produce 70% of the world's platinum. Industrialists and some economists say that after the previous mining strike disaster, any further work stoppage could potentially have disastrous effects on South Africa's economy and political stability.
These strikes will be disastrous for South Africa. They'll add not only anxiety about exports of gold and platinum, but they'll add anxiety about the political situation as well. So we could very easily see a sharp depreciation of the rand associated with a strike at this time.
After the 2012 strike, South Africa's government is keen to avoid any disaster. An urgent meeting of industry and union leaders is planned in order to find a quick way out of the conflict.
Well, that wraps up African news from me for now, but I will be back with more in an hour. Stay with us, so more news and headlines coming up after a short break.